See Rob's hand in.
Uh-oh.
And Leah Inge also correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
See Rob's hand in.
And Leah Inge also correct. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. See Rob's hand in.
All right, Counselor, you're on. I'm going to go ahead and make you host.
Okay. Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate all the technical assistance support.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
All right. Have a
you,
good
Joe.
evening. Enjoy your dinner.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Send pizza.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll have on my clock 5:32 p.m. Ms. Gloriosa Mas, will you please conduct a roll call for us?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Member Yolanda Eisenstein.
Here.
Member Bruce Finger.
Here.
Member Judith Gabriel.
Here.
Member Robert Morlino.
Here.
Member Sid Redner.
Here.
Member Yvette Serrano.
Here.
Member Khalil Spencer.
Here.
Member Sky Tolman. I see him in the wait room. I will promote him.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Member Sky Tolman.
Here.
Chair Michael Garcia.
Present.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. Do we have any changes from staff?
None, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do we have any changes from any of the committee members? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, motion to approve from Sky.
I'll second.
I think that was
From
a second
Bruce.
by Bruce.
Yes,
Okay.
Bruce.
Great, thank you so much. Any discussion? Hearing none, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Member Eisenstein.
Approve.
Member Finger.
Approved.
Member Gabriel.
Approve.
Member Morlino.
Yes.
Member Redner.
Approve.
Member Serrano.
Approve.
Member Spencer.
Approve.
Member Tolman.
Approve.
Chair Garcia.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you so much. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our December 10th, 2020 meeting. Do we have any changes from committee members? Hearing none, may I request a motion from the committee on the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Okay,
Second.
motion to approve from Ms. Eisenstein, second by Mr. Spencer. Any discussion? Hearing none, can we get a roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Member Eisenstein.
Approve.
Member Finger.
Approved.
Member Gabriel.
Approve.
Member Morlino.
Approved.
Member Redner.
Approve.
Member Serrano.
Approve.
Member Spencer.
Approve.
Member Tolman.
Yes.
Chair Garcia.
Yes, and Gesundheit, God bless you, Cal.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Absolutely. Okay, next up on the agenda is communications from the floor. If we have any community members that are in the meeting, please raise your hand and I will go ahead and promote you to be able to speak from the floor. And I see 3 individuals. Okay, so I see Morgan Roth. I'm going to promote you. All right, here we go. I think, Morgan, are you allowed to talk now?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I will only take a few seconds here, but I wanted to introduce myself to this committee and to you, Councilor Garcia. My name is Morgan Roth. I am on the Bird Scooters Government and Partnerships team. I understand that the city is looking at a few various micromobility programs and items in the coming year for the study. And I wanted to introduce myself and express our interest in working with the city as that that study and other things come to fruition. We're very much interested in operating, in coordination with the city and in helping with the city's sustainability and transportation goals. And so I again, just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'll be reaching out separately. Wanted to wish everyone a nice evening and say hello.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Roth, for the introduction, and we look forward to your communication. Any other community members that would like to speak from the floor? I see Gary and Laura. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close that portion of the agenda and move on to the next item, which is communications from other agencies. Santa Fe Metropolitan Planning Organization. Eric, are you with us this evening? I see Eric
I'm
is
happy
in the
to
attending room.
jump in for
Sure.
Eric if you maybe
Sure, go.
stepped away for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Hannah, the floor is yours.
Oh, this is Leah.
Oh, sorry, Leah.
Yeah, thank you. So there are several exciting things going on. We had the kickoff meeting today for the multimodal transit and parking study transition plan that the MPO is assisting the city with. It's a city project, but we are helping manage that. And so that's going to entail looking in detail at a couple of areas in the city to see how they could support bicycle and pedestrian and how that connects to transit access in those areas, as well as a 5-year transit analysis and a parking analysis. Eric, do you want to jump in and take it from here?
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to go get my headphones. What we will do is sort of a standing item every month now, given this is moving forward. We're excited to work with the city to advance this mobility transition plan. We see that this committee would be a primary stakeholder and look forward to your specific input as it progresses over the next 18 months. I wanted to make a quick comment as to Morgan's introduction. The MPO, I think for good reasons, have been the recipient from at least, I'm counting 3 different electric scooter companies in the recent months. And the reason I had a nice chat with Morgan yesterday, I had a nice chat with another gentleman from a different company today is that there really is no, I guess, mechanism for a company to address the city. And what I wanted to bring up tonight and have Morgan introduce himself is Councilor Garcia and the rest of you, what would be appropriate for the consideration of moving, at least exploring the idea beyond the MPO, because of course we're neutral, but we would like at least an appropriate path for somebody to make that offer for micro mobility. So does anybody have any questions about that? And I understand from the city's perspective that there's major concerns. There's a resolution that bans e-scooters now. The MPO propagated a white paper per that resolution. And so we're at a kind of a standstill with e-scooters.
Yeah. Sky, I see your hand up. Do you have a question for Eric or comment?
Yeah, maybe somewhere in between. So it seems like the
like the two mechanisms that a city would normally use would either be like an RFP if they're soliciting a particular provider for scooters, or they'd do sort of a policy change where they'd permit a scooter company to apply for a permit or something and have some rules around that. And so would that be the approach that we take to create that platform, like create a permitting structure for companies like Bird or others to apply to put some scooters on the road?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, that's very similar to what Albuquerque did 2 years ago. The short answer is that the city really doesn't have a mechanism. And that's what I wanted to broach is there a desire for the city to have one, and what would be that mechanism? Outside of, I think, the companies maybe sending a direct request to the city manager / mayor and to see where it would go from there. What I thought would be practical was presenting it to this committee to at least maybe start the framework of discussion about what would be appropriate and going forward. I would at least like to see the city have a dialogue about the pros and cons. And I think a pilot project might reveal that, hey, it doesn't fit with the city, or it does. So I'll leave it there, but that's where we're at.
Okay, does that address, I guess, the in-between comment and question, Sky? Okay, cool. Let's move on. I see Cal's hand is up.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. What I recall from about a year ago is there was, we did have I don't know if you call it a hearing, but we had a discussion with at least one e-scooter company at the Btac under a previous chair. And I got the impression at the time that there was a sort of a temporary ban on approving those, but that the city was going to discuss it and study it. So does anybody have any idea where that went? Has there been any progress on that or any discussion at the city level as to what to do with e-scooters?
Mr. Chair, I can answer that directly if it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric.
Mr. Chair and Cal, yeah, the MPO volunteered to fulfill that obligation for the city. We did with the update of the MTP with a appendix that is a white paper on the e-scooter issues. I thought it was well received by, I think, Councilor Romero, Councilor Lindell initiated that ban 2 years ago. The city manager was, the resolution sort of compelled the city manager to make a decision by May of 2020. And then, of course, COVID. And so I think everyone can give the city manager a break that it's probably not a priority during these unprecedented times. So here we are approaching May of 2021 in short order. That was the directive. Again, the MPO would like to figure out a way to fairly move this discussion forward in a productive manner. And if the answer is no, great. But I just feel it's a bit unfair to have these nice people in limbo land without some direct communication from the city.
It seemed to me that there was also a problem with getting the state to make some definitions of e-bikes and other e-devices so that there was some legal basis for, you know, are they fish or fowl or something else?
Mr. Chair and Cal, I look to what happened in Albuquerque was a success for both e-bikes and scooters, and then of course COVID came in. So yeah.
Okay.
And so I guess, Eric, quick question or I guess recommendation from you. I can reach out to the city manager and mayor, see where we are at with that process. And if it would be feasible for us as a committee to begin to look into the process, if it hadn't been established. Do you think that would be appropriate next course of action?
Mr. Chair, absolutely. And what I can do for you is put together a real brief bullet as to the timeline. and the facts. And for example, the facts that I can demonstrate that at three different times via email and phone, the city has been approached by 3 different companies who are genuinely interested in a pilot project. And that would be, and then I could also put some facts around, where the city's come in the last 2 years for you to then present it to the city manager.
Okay, that would be fantastic. And
Yeah,
then we can, plan it and chart a path forward, whatever the outcome may be after those discussions.
Yeah, I will have that for you promptly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that assistance on it.
Sure. And that's all I have for updates for the MPO.
Okay.
Could
Any
I,
other questions? Sure, absolutely.
yeah, I'll just add one thing that from the MPO's side, that I've been updating the 2018 bikeways and trails map. So that is nearing completion. But if so, one, that's coming up on the horizon to look forward to. It'll be the 2021 bikeways and trails map. And then 2, if there's if you have any input on the map to share with me, then please do that sooner than later. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Leah. I appreciate that final update. Any questions for Eric or Leah?
Yeah, I have a quick question for Leah, because I mean, I'm on now. Finally, I know how to find your website and I have it bookmarked, but it has like 2 dates, 2012, 2019. So what is 2018 supposed to signify?
I think you're looking at the bicycle master plan, I believe.
Yes,
right. So this is the map, the actual, the fold out map that you can get from bike shops and the tourism center. So with all the trails and bike lanes marked.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from committee members? I'm not seeing any hands virtually or physically go up. So thank you, Eric and Leah. And Eric, I definitely look forward to getting the info from you, and then we can determine how we're going to move forward with these e-scooters.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next portion of the agenda. So we're on to 7A, discussion on bicycle issues, i.e. crossings on major roads, deteriorating condition of sharrows, winter riding on roads and trails, and usage of the electronic version of the city trail map. And presenting is committee member Spencer.
Okay.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. This was actually sort of our subcommittee report, given it was a holiday and period and everybody is busy. But one of the first things we wanted to look into, and I communicated this to Ramella, is as far as education, some of our markings, such as sharrows, are both an MUTCD traffic control device and an educational device, and that it instructs both motorists and bicyclists where people should be or where people ought to be or are allowed to be. And one of the things I noticed, sort of doing a bit of a survey along the river trail in West and East Alameda, is that the sharrows are pretty much trashed. They're pretty worn out. In some places, they've been patched over with hot patch or cold patch. In other places, the paint is just deteriorated to the point where they're almost invisible. So one of the questions that's come up in terms of safety and pedestrian bicycle conflicts is the river trail. And I think especially where it narrows down to the point along Alameda, I think it's around Sandoval, where it's no longer an AASHTO compliant 8-foot width that basically goes down to sidewalk width. So the question is, should the city, in order to both educate and direct both bicyclists and motorists as to where we ought to be repainting the sharrows and also putting in the bicycles may use full lane, I think it's R411, at the point where the river trail goes down to sidewalk width. So that would do 2 things. It would both be a traffic control device or traffic rather than advisory, and it would also be an educational device. So one of the things we wanted to find out as a subcommittee was where the city is on both painting and repainting the sharrows and putting in the bicycles may use full lanes. That may not apply only to West Alameda, but that was one of the highlights that I looked at because it's come up in front of this committee several times in terms of conflicts and protests from pedestrians that they were having close calls. Second item is winter usage. One of the things that I've seen on the river trail again is that since it and probably other trails are built along easements and rights of ways where it's convenient, especially along the river trail just to the west of the St. Francis crossing, there's been a recent condominium development that puts part of that trail in permanent shadow. And so there's vast amounts of ice all the way from around St. Francis to south of the, I think the first crossing as you're going to the southwest. I think it's about a mile. So in terms of whether these are supposed to be year-round facilities, does the city have a policy of snow and ice removal, not just plowing, but removing ice? And so those were, and the third item we were looking at was, the question came up in our subcommittee email communications. Does the city have any way of tracking how well the no right on red enforcement is going? For example, at the Zia crossing, I think that I think Judith asked that. And I noticed I was riding that the other day on a Saturday or Sunday, and there was a police officer waiting to pass through the intersection, and two people made an illegal right on red right in front of me. So I think in terms of safety and compliance, the question is, do we have any way of tracking how effective that signage is? And then finally, I asked this before, we have a bicycle and trails map that comes out periodically, and it has a safety section in it. What I'd like to do is get permission for this committee and the city to have a standalone document of some of the safety information there that we can put on, say, a 1 or 2 fold flyer and put in all the bike shops, not just sort of as part of a trail map, which is probably what most people are interested in, but put it in bike shops and maybe along trails to highlight some of the more important safety aspects of riding on our trail system. So in addition to the signage we have on the trails, we can actually put out flyers that people can read and kind of highlight the need for more thinking on this. So that was what we put in the agenda right now. It's actually also our subcommittee work for the month. So we're doing it now, I guess. Maybe we should have just put it as the in our committee report, but we put it up front as 7A. So do we have any feedback on that from the city on any of those things, or the MPO?
Chair, Member Spencer, yes, I have. I contacted the traffic operations manager of City of Santa Fe, Public Works. And for the question about the bicycles allowed to use full lane, the signs were ordered incorrectly, and they do not know who ordered it or who ordered them. But since then, their sign team has been changing out to the correct R4-11 signs, 30 by 30 square, white background with black bicycle sign. We don't have, or the city doesn't have a traffic engineer at the moment that can make necessary judgment or study to install more signs. So we don't know when we will have a traffic engineer, but the city retained a consultant from Wilson to act as a traffic engineer.
Mhm.
So I will get hold of that consultant.
So-
For the sharrows, the city installed 278 sharrows about 8 years ago. There was funding to purchase those sharrows, but there was no funding to maintain them. So for the next fiscal year, maybe this committee can request Public Works to budget funding for maintaining sharrows, 278 sharrows. One of your questions too was how to if there are if the city has a catalog of which traffic lights do not respond to bicycle input. They don't know that. They don't have any data, but there are cameras that Public Works bought and the signal shop installed that will detect bicycles. Those intersections are Rodeo Road, Richards, all approaches. Richards, Governor Miles, all approaches. Sia, Camino Carlos Rey, southbound approach. Siringo, Camino Carlos Rey, north and southbound approach. Pasaya de Peralta, Don Gaspar, southbound approach. And for the winter, for road maintenance and bike lanes maintenance during winter, it was discussed last year at Btac, and the Public Works Department Director said that we are going to maintain bike lanes during winter.
Okay, sorry.
Your last question, if we have any indication of how effective the no right or red signs, the transportation traffic operations manager said that he does not have any data for that. So he doesn't know the answer to that. And I wish to inform you that the Parks Division Manager, she's Melissa McDonald. She's not available to attend this meeting, but she will be attending our February meeting. So if you have any member who has questions about trails maintenance, please ask that question at that time in February.
Can I ask a couple follow-up questions, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Okay, one question. Does the city need to have a PE or PTOE on staff, or can you make decisions on the basis of a PTOE who is basically a contractor, such as from Wilson? It sounds like you can, is that correct?
Sorry, my internet connection is so unstable. Could you please repeat the question?
Okay, sorry. My question was, does a contractor PTOE have authority to basically authorize the city to put up signage, or does it have to be a staff person?
Mr. Chair, Member Spencer, I believe the traffic consultant will have authority to do that.
Okay. As far as sharrows, would it help if we sent in, say, locations where sharrows are completely worn out, just to basically get stuff prioritized? I mean, for example, Palace Ave was great because it doesn't have a lot of traffic. I think Alameda is just worn out. So if there's a way for us to funnel information to you or to the city traffic manager, maybe we could just get a priority list if funding are limited, just to get high priority stuff done.
Mr. Chair, Member Spencer, I think that would be a great help, Public Works.
I started doing some photography, but I didn't want to post it because I wasn't sure that would violate the Open Meetings Act by getting a discussion going. But I think there'd be several of us who'd be willing to, depending on where we live, start looking at that and sending information in through appropriate channels.
Or you can also add it in your strategic work plan.
Mm-hmm.
You
Okay.
can add it in as one action or one activity in the work plan, Btac's work plan.
Okay. Any subcommittee members have any additional comments? Judith, you're there?
Yeah, I think I have maybe two questions. One relates to the sharrows. So is there a way to ensure that dollars for maintenance would be a regular occurrence so that we don't have to do it by year or whatever. And I don't know if that would go in the bicycle master plan or if it would be some other thing that could allow it to be a recurring budget item so that we wouldn't have to do it on an annual basis. So that would be my first question.
Mr. Chair, Member Gabriel, I will get back to you on that. We can go two ways, apply for funding, but usually for funding, it's not maintenance. Construction, building, all those things are funded, but maintenance is not. It's included in the operations. So every fiscal year, there's, each department, each division, they have their own budget. But unfortunately, this past year, because of COVID, we have very limited budget. And I do not know this coming fiscal year. Maybe Councilor Garcia can answer that better than me. But we'll try to put it in the next fiscal year's budget.
Yeah, and I'll jump in, I guess, to answer Member Gabriel's question in regards to ensuring that there's recurring funding every year. I think, and maybe there are other mechanisms, but one mechanism would have been to include it in the resolution. But with that, you would have definitely a lot of questions from governing body members, why and how much and how we arrived at that particular cost. When in an instance, it might be better to leave it out of the resolution because in some years, good years, you might have more money. Bad years, you might have less money. Whereas if you said we want an X amount every year, and I haven't seen too many resolutions that carry that. So, but to answer your question, that would be a way to guarantee it, and we didn't include it in this resolution.
Yeah, I guess, Mr. Chair, I guess the problem with Sharrows is unlike other signs, which sit by the side of the road, these get driven over all the time, so they're kind of an odd duck. So maybe we just need to think about how to maintain them, because I think if we're talking about green lanes and other things like that, Sharrows we already have them. I think we ought to make them work. Right, and I think that's where maybe we're just strategic in regards to how they're implemented. And if the way that they're being implemented right now causes the deterioration in them to age faster, is there a better way to utilize resources to ensure that they're more sustainable? Yeah, well, it's, just looking at the few I looked at downtown, it sounds like they're just worn out based on vehicle miles traveled. So they're just getting pounded. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's a way to prioritize at least which roads get surveyed to look at them. Okay, no, that's a great point. Yeah, and on that last question, I don't know if we need to talk to Eric or and Leah, but is there a way to get a hold of some of the electronic version of the bike map so we could extract some information to make, say, a short and sweet safety message that we could put in bike shops and along trails?
Yes, you can, if you need electronic, I don't know if you mean like a GIS file or just a PDF, but feel free to reach out to me and I can get you whatever you need of that.
Yeah, I just didn't want to try to steal anything without your permission because you'd probably hit me over the head.
It's all publicly available, so steal away.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Member Gabrielle, did you have any more questions?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the issue of intersections and data. I feel like it's a little bit bigger than data. My question is, how do we find out about enforcement? The intersection at St. Francis and Zia is a particular concern to me. I use it several times a week. And there are always cars running the red lights. There's a light, there's 2 signs. And so I wonder not only about, it sounds like we don't have data on how effective they are, although we have anecdotal data because they're not effective. And is there a mechanism for making a request for enforcement at intersections like that? And probably some others that are pretty hairy.
Mr. Chair, Member Gabriel, maybe that's one issue or concern that Member Finger can bring to the Public Safety Committee, because he's our representative. I'm not sure when are they going to meet. I think it's February.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I tried to stop the disturbance outside from and muted my mic and didn't turn it back on. Mr. Finger, since they brought it to your attention, is that something you wouldn't mind bringing to the Public Safety Committee meeting next time you attend it?
Not a problem. I was going to let you know that they're actually meeting next Tuesday. It's
Okay.
It's going to be a Zoom meeting sometime in the early afternoon. One more thing I wanted to mention to the committee. I sent everybody an email with a link to the city's new reporting site for traffic issues, signage issues. I've already was pretty successful in using it. We had a couple signs torn down by vandals. I reported it through that system and they were repaired in less than a week. So like I said, I sent that to everybody in an email. So you can have a link to that. If you need to report anything, you just send pictures with it, explain what it is. You're given a report number, and the communication I got back from the city was really great when it was fixed. And it might be a viable site to report these bicycle, I forget what you call them, bicycle markers on the streets. That might be a good way to start getting it on the record that those need to be repaired or repainted. So that's all I have, Councilor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Bruce. And I'll just echo what he was talking about in regards to our constituent reporting system. It's great mechanism because it allows us to track what the constituent reports, and constituent can follow up. Us as staff can follow up all the way through closeout. It's a great mechanism. So, and it goes beyond any issues that bicycle and trails. If you see graffiti, potholes, whatever issue it is, it's a great new mechanism that we've implemented with the city. So I highly encourage you to promote it for usage. And so, Ms. Gabrielle, I think you had the floor for the question.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, that's great that we can do that as individual citizens. Is there any benefit to identifying as a Btac member to give it more weight if we have a concern of the committee, or should we just use it as a citizen? It seems like that would be a way to advance the work of the committee if we have joint concerns. So I'm just curious what others think about that, or should we avoid saying we're members of the committee and just keep with the citizen request? I'm curious, what's the best approach?
Well, there's both. I mean, we as a committee, if we would like to collect information in regards to signs that are down, any issues, and put it into the system, it's not going to get a priority preference over any other constituent, whether it's a Btac inputting the information or a private citizen. But if we want to input the information as a collective, and we kind of can, as a collective, follow the information, sure, I think that's at the will of the committee, how we would like to move forward. But if we want to do it individually or as a committee, we can both do so. I just wanted to kind of reinforce that it's not going to get a priority because it's being reported by Btac.
That's all I have.
So-
Thank you.
Okay. So I see Sky's hand up. Question, Sky?
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to comment on the Sharrow's discussion. And there's been some studies in the last few years that point to them as being relatively ineffective for increasing safety or promoting increased ridership. And so given that the city is facing a lot of budget constraints, it might be wise for us to just really focus on maybe the most effective countermeasures. And if the Sharrows are something that, you know, some research shows don't make a huge difference in terms of safety or wayfinding or ridership, there's a lot of other issues maybe we should prioritize our dollars with in the next year or two, you know, depending on how long this recession lasts.
Okay, thank you for the input, Sky. Cal, I see your hand up.
Not to disagree with Sky, because I've read the same reports, but I think in areas like downtown where we basically don't have any more room than we have, I think the purpose of the Sharrows is to try to encourage road sharing as opposed to putting bicycles on sidewalks, which were not designed to be a multi-use facility. So I think strategic use of them makes sense. Yeah, they don't particularly, I don't think there's any evidence that they encourage ridership or increase ridership. And they're not the first choice where you have better alternatives. But I think in some of our more restricted areas, the question is, what do we do to create the best mix among the facilities we have and the users we have? So that's my main point there. I wouldn't just spray them all over the city as a substitute for something else, but for places like Alameda and the River Trail, what are the options? So, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comments, Kyle. And any other questions or comments on this agenda item? Okay, was there any action that needed to be taken?
I think on those, I think the main thing was a report and to get some feedback on the city, from the city, for the questions we had. I guess to move forward and just keep an eye on these things. And I guess I'll try to get a hold of those electronic files and work with the subcommittee to see if we can put something together and submit it to Ramella to see if it's something the city can work with.
Great. Thank you, Cal.
So that's all for us.
Okay. All right.
Our subcommittee report as well, unless there's some.
Okay, yeah, we can address the subcommittee reports, I think, later on in the agenda. Hearing no action or no other discussion, let's go to move on to 7B, which is SFMPO website review. And so with that, Eric and Leah, I'll let you take it on over.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thanks. I'll give a brief overview and then hand it over to Leah to navigate through the website. What you're looking at is a relatively new website, and it was there's a lot going on here in terms of why we have a website. Basically, the Code of Federal Regulations requires MPO to host information, data, and all things policy related on a public-facing website so that the public has access to a transparent transportation planning process. With that spirit, we built this website with the idea of putting simplicity first behind complexity. And what I mean by that is that what you see and what we're going to navigate through are the primary elements of the MPO in a way that we hope is user-friendly and accessible to the masses, if you want to call it that. When I say complexity behind simplicity, is that if you dig deeper into it, you will see the MPO following guidelines federally to archive minutes from meetings and all public documents up to 7 years. So there's a prescriptive element, what you're seeing here, but I want to just preface that to that we built this with the idea of having a little bit of fun too in mind. And that is giving the public and leadership like yourselves access to some of the cool stuff that we're working on in a way that people can relate to. So we invite constructive criticism if we're achieving that and or not. And with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Leah to navigate through portions of this.
Okay, so yeah, there are a couple of, I think, areas of our website that might be particularly interesting and useful to you all. So I'll show you a couple of those. First, I want to point out that this is our homepage, santafempo.org. And there are 3 main ways to navigate to different parts of the website. So up here, there are these tabs at the top. And then in this, oops, I didn't mean to click that. Then on the home page, Hannah is our website guru, and so she keeps this middle section updated with relevant things. So we just had a youth transportation photo contest that's here, our transportation policy board and technical coordinating committee information is here, and that'll direct you to that webpage. Other miscellaneous things. And then we have this section right here. So this is another really useful, these quick links. And so sometimes it's easier to just scroll down here and you may find what you're looking for in these quick links here. So I'm going to start by showing you where our plans live. So you can find them the plans button right there, or if you scroll down, plans. And we have several plans. So we're required by the federal government to have a long-range transportation plan, and we update that every 5 years, and that's our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So this plan, it covers all forms of transportation, and we have several specific plans for specific modes of transportation that are under the umbrella of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. One thing that might be interesting to you all in our Metropolitan Transportation Plan is it has a list of projects that basically those would be projects that would potentially require federal funding. And so there are some bicycle related projects on the project list in our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, as well as, other information about biking and walking. But the more detailed information about biking and walking, you'll find in our Bicycle Master Plan, which was completed in 2019 or adopted in 2019. And the Pedestrian Master Plan is a little bit older. It was completed in 2015. And then also, if you're interested, we have our Public Transit Master Plan and a Teen Mobility Plan. So I'll take you to the Bicycle Master Plan page. So this, you can, from this page, you can access the full plan. I want to say it's about, well, it says right here, 105 pages. And it's pretty readable. There are a lot of graphics. I think it's definitely worth looking through. Then I also wanted to show you this Appendix A. So this is the Santa Fe Metropolitan Bicycle Design Toolkit. And this was before my time, but the MPO at that time contracted with Tool, which is a transportation consultant firm. And they're really leading, I think, one of the private, consultant agencies or whatever they're called, companies that I think is helping lead the way with with design for bicycles in cities. So if you look in this, I do recommend that you check out Appendix A, and that'll just help you know, one, what the city, what they adopted, because they did adopt this plan along with the county and the Pueblo Tuque and the NMDOT. So what they basically agreed to, and it has some really good design standards that we should definitely strive for. Then if you scroll down, so here we also have a link, and this was a description of how to use this was sent out to you earlier. So we have the bicycle mapping platform. And this is, I think, another really helpful tool. So there's a comprehensive list of projects in the Bicycle Master Plan beyond what is in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, because this includes all of the little projects that would never receive federal funding that the city, maybe would be able to tackle on their own. So they're all mapped out. You can see them. You click on 2019 because there are projects from the 2012 Bicycle Master Plan in this as well. And then the plan divides them into different phases of when these projects would happen. So you have to click on a button here to choose your phase, and then you can click on a project and get information about it. The different colors are based off of their status. So if they're already designed or funded or have anything like that. You can also look at the existing conditions to kind of see what is on the road now or on the ground now, and then fill in gaps or see how the gaps are filled with the planned projects. So those are our plans, and there's one other thing that you might be interested in, and I think I can't remember if I've presented about this before, but it's our Transportation Improvement Program, which I think the easiest way to find it is in this blue section. What are you looking for? Tip. And this is our list that we are federally required to maintain of all of the projects in the region that are receiving federal funds or programmed to receive federal funds in the next, it's a 6-year list. And or if they're not receiving federal funds, then they may be regionally significant, such as the county is funding the Southeast Connector here. So some of these projects are bicycle pedestrian projects, such as the Arroyo Hondo Trail in the county, and you may be interested, or just I think it's good to know, good for you to know what these projects are, or that this list exists so that you can reference it if you want to. And with that, I'll pass it over to Hannah to talk about a couple of other sections of the website. And Hannah, I'll try and just follow along with the website as you talk.
That would be good. I hope everyone can hear me. Thanks, Leah, for that introduction. I want to point out that if you scroll all the way to the bottom of any page, there's also another way to navigate. So if you get tired of looking at things and you want to go somewhere else, you can just scroll to the very bottom, and that can get you around pretty quickly. I do tend to make my pages longer instead of having links that go to lots of different pages, because I'm of the mind that once you can find one page, then you can take your time exploring it rather than maybe never finding the page. The search bar at the top, there's that little look for button. That's really useful on the top right, that little magnifying glass, and you can look for things that you might want to look for. So for example, Leah, maybe you can take us to the story maps page using that. Look for story maps. Yeah, hit that. Hit that first story maps for me. That one, yes. So then this page, for example, is something we are just kind of working on. But if you scroll down a little and hit that right one for the maps, and I can show you where we're going to start putting a bunch of our maps as we make them. And I think some of them will be useful. Right now we have this crash map, and it used to be on our committee's page, but now I've moved it over here. And this is just a map of all the crashes at intersections. It's going to be updated sometime soon. But the point is that there is useful pages like this on our website as well. The other resource that I really think is interesting or useful is the committees tab, Leah, at the top, because this goes to both what are either our transportation board and our technical committee, coordinating committee, their pages, and there are the minutes and the agendas on each of those pages. But if you go to the upcoming meetings page, this is kind of where we're keeping like what has happened recently in these committees. So if you want to hear what has recently happened, we've put all the previous actions here at the bottom, at the very bottom of this in the green. Here we go. And I can see on my page, I don't know how that's looking to you, Leah. Is that okay? It's a kind of getting cut off for me a little bit. So if you see anything like that, let me know. But here you can see just like the kind of a chronology of recent events. I just started building this, so I hope to fill it out. But that can give you a quick oversight of like what's happened in our world. Does anyone have any questions or anything they're interested in seeing about the website?
Any
Yeah,
committee members with questions?
Yeah, I have one question, I guess, in Leah's part of the presentation where we came to the MPO maps or bicycle master plan maps. So I know the PDF document which says like, what is the meaning of green, blue, and yellow, but it's not on this map inside the website. It would be nice to have that legend as part of the map.
Yeah, it's, do you know where it is, Hannah?
Go ahead, Leah.
Okay, where is it? There it is. So I hit this down arrow right there, and then it tells me what these are.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, they take a lot of playing with these interactive maps are like pretty interesting. And depending on which map they are, you just got to click a lot of stuff. So you just got to get used to playing with different maps. I do want to point out really quick, Leah, if you could go to the pedestrian master plan page, because on that page, and I think this is pertinent to what you were discussing about the sharrows, on the bottom left, if you scroll down a little bit more on, so that loading page on the left there, this is a document that the Walk Institute, this prepared after their visit where they looked at Santa Fe in 2014 about walkable environments and how to make that better. I would say I would consult this document before you have your sharrows discussion, because it has a couple of good insights, I think, about how do you use dollars wisely when you have sharrows, and some of them maybe you want to move a sharrow instead of having one. So I would just look at that to kind of get informed a little bit about what kind of documents we have to help support arguments and things like that. And then I would love to hear from any of you if you have any suggestions or questions about the website.
Any feedback for the presenters?
I think it was actually very nice. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric, Leah, and Hannah. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, great. I want to make sure. Not speaking out of turn. So with that, thank you so much. Is there any action we need to take on this? Just information item or any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, MPO team, for that presentation. Beautiful website, and I'm assuming as Btac members or any community members have input, they can reach out to you to make any recommendations, comments, concerns. Okay, so let's go to move on to the next agenda item, which is item 7C, review of the Guadalupe Bridge Rehabilitation Project, 60% design plan. And with that, we've got Raymond Trujillo. And let me see, is Mr. Trujillo?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the invite. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Trujillo.
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd like to kind of just for me to talk about what we're doing with this bridge and the scope of work for the bridge is basically we're going to perform the scope is to repair the bridge, to extend the service life of the bridge, do some minor repaving, do some sidewalk and median improvements, and provide not only vehicular traffic control, but also pedestrian traffic control during construction. And is it possible to share my screen with you? I don't know if, oh yeah, here it is. Okay, and I'll just go through a few little plan sheets here, so I won't take up too much of your time. Can you see my screen okay? Let's see.
I think we can
There
see
we
it
go. We
now.
can see that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just kind of wrote here. This is a plan view of the Guadalupe Street Bridge. You know, we have West Alameda running here. Of course, this direction is north, and Guadalupe Street comes along here, and this is the intersection with West Alameda. And the Santa Fe River crosses here under the Guadalupe Street Bridge. So as you can see, my legend over here, minor paving bridge deck. The scope is to do some minor paving, about 10 feet of repaving. We'll take out 2 inches of asphalt and put back 2 inches. Same thing on the other side. And also we'll remove the asphalt on the bridge deck, remove the medians and portions of the sidewalks, and rebuild the bridge deck with concrete instead of asphalt. Concrete just performs better than asphalt on a bridge deck, from my experience. And also rebuild the median here, and also rebuild the sidewalks. We're actually going to make the sidewalks a little wider for pedestrians. And so that's the bulk of the scope of work. There's quite a few other things, minor things that we're going to do, but that's the bulk of the work to extend the service life of the bridge. There will be this is a profile view of underneath the bridge, what it looks like. It's a nice reinforced concrete arch bridge with some pedestrian railing up top. You can see there's a big scope of work here, but like I mentioned, the main items was just to repair the concrete deck and do some minor paving at the approaches. Also traffic control, I'll mention. We plan to do the bridge in phases, like shown here, phase 1, where we're going to close this. Now this view is looking north as you're heading north on Guadalupe, right before the intersection with West Alameda. So we're going to close the southbound lane, outside lane, and the sidewalk. And then we're going to remove the asphalt, remove any loose concrete, and then build it back up with what we call polyester concrete. It's a very strong concrete, stronger than conventional concrete and longer lasting. And then of course, we're going to remove a portion of the sidewalk and build it out a little wider to make it 7'6" wide, like shown right here. And we also are providing pedestrian traffic control, directing them where to go to get across to this side, so they can cross West Alameda if they're heading that direction. Then phase 2, after we rebuild the outside lane, southbound lane, and sidewalk, we'll move to the this inside lane, southbound lane, and the median, and also the left turn lane on the northbound side. So we have a big 31'6" work zone. Do the same thing, remove the the median and replace it, remove asphalt and loose concrete and pour back some polyester concrete. And then after that, and note that both sidewalks are open at this point. And then phase 3, there's 2 phases of 3, 2 different phases for phase 3. It's phase 3A, which will be now we move to this next lane here, the northbound lane here that will close, and also remove the asphalt and loose concrete and then rebuild it with polyester concrete. Both sidewalks will remain open, and also both lanes on the southbound side are open. And phase 4 is finally getting to the outside here, where we'll close the outside turn lane, right turn lane, northbound, remove a portion of the sidewalk and rebuild it out to 11'6". And then also note that southbound lane and the sidewalk on the other side are open. And that's the end of it. That'll be the final phase of construction. And with each phase, we estimate no more than, if we get a good contractor, no more than 14 days per phase. 10 to 14 days is what we estimate. So I don't know if there's any questions on the project itself.
Mr. Chair, can I please speak before we continue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yes, Romella.
If you notice, if the committee notices, each meeting we had, I think beginning December, we had some plans that we presented to the committee for review, because in your duties and responsibilities, Btac has responsibility to review plans at 30% and before it goes for NMDOT for review. So this plan is going for 90% review with NMDOT perhaps end of the month. So we presented this to the committee for review. And the subcommittee that does that is the Planning and Funding Subcommittee. So the review will be led by Member Tolman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that update, Romella. Do any committee members have any questions for Mr. Trujillo?
I think we do, but maybe I'll defer to Sky since he's our subcommittee chair.
Yeah, maybe we have a few comments that we had discussed, but I don't know, maybe that's not questions. Maybe there's other questions that people want to ask first to clarify anything.
Okay, any other committee members want to have questions before Sky gives some comments? Not really seeing any, Sky, so the floor is yours.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I had some questions. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Is it okay if I ask them?
Yes, Member Gabrielle.
So
The
the first one was, I was wondering when the project was starting, and I'm sorry if I missed that. And then I had questions about the sidewalks. Are they for pedestrians only or multi-use areas? And maybe Sky, your subcommittee has some comments or questions about those as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mr. Chair, Member Gabrielle, perhaps I can answer that. So this project has started in October. So the design, we will try to get the design plan reviewed by NMDOT at the end of the month. After that, we have to obtain all the certifications and start construction. I think, Ray, if I'm not wrong, is it in May or June?
Was it of this year, or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could definitely get plans ready before then. Yes, for construction.
For construction, May or June.
Yes.
So this is funded by NMDOT, Local Government Transportation Fund, for $750,000. and we are going to have another $100,000 from city, from impact fees. What's the other question? The sidewalk, the policy of the city is you can bicycle on sidewalks. So sidewalks in the city, within the city limits, it's not only for pedestrian.
Maybe I'll go next. So I've seen it's been a little bit of time has passed, but I've seen the city's plans for the Guadalupe project, kind of north of the bridge, to retrofit that area. And if I remember correctly, the Guadalupe across the street here from Alameda up to Paseo de Peralta is going to be one lane of traffic in each direction with a expanded median and bike lanes and expanded sidewalks. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Member Tolman, so there's another project that is connected to this project, and it's called the Guadalupe Street Reconstruction Project. And that is reducing 4 lanes to 3 lanes. And there will be bicycle lanes, and they will widen the sidewalks. And that the design, the 90% design has been reviewed by NMDOT about 2 weeks ago. And we're going to apply for extension of the cooperative agreement because it ends in April, but the design is not yet finished. So we are applying for extending the design to until September, and we may be able to start construction 2 months after that or beginning of 2022. So we were successful in applying for additional funding for constructing that project.
Excellent.
Additional $2.5 million from HCD.
So kind of as a follow-up, I wanted to confirm that was still the case on the other part of Guadalupe. So if the Guadalupe right across the street is going to be 1 lane of directional traffic in each direction, you said 3 lanes. So the middle lane is the turning lane, and then there's 1 lane, 1 north and 1 south lane. Then it doesn't really seem to make sense to maintain 2 southbound lanes on Guadalupe over the bridge and then 3 lanes going north. It seems if we're the 2 northbound lanes, one of them is a straight and right turn. One of them is just a straight lane and the other one is a left turn lane. If the continuation of Guadalupe is going to be a single lane, I wonder, and I kind of doubt that traffic conditions would warrant 3 lanes going into that if there's only 1 lane continuing. Has that been looked into, or has that been considered, sort of what the future conditions are going to look like rather than the current conditions? And I guess the reason I ask is because that could free up 10 to 15 feet of street space where bike lanes could connect a little bit further, across the bridge, and even just up to Agua Fria would connect that little piece of new bicycle infrastructure that's coming to an existing corridor that's important and highly used by bicycles. So it seems like reconstructing the lane configuration more or less as it is might not make sense given the reduction of lanes that's planned.
Mr. Chair, Member Tolman, I will ask our consultant about that. What we're going to do now is send the Guadalupe Street reconstruction plan to Ray Trujillo because he is the consultant for the bridge, and the bridge plan will be sent to Wilson consultants. So there will be some coordination for these two projects, so they understand if there are some conflicts, like what you're saying, they can determine that at that point. So that's what we are going to do next after
Okay,
this.
excellent. So my comment from Btac would be that especially the southbound second lane on over the bridge seems redundant, if not, the three different lanes going north. Especially since there won't be 2 rows of traffic crossing there ever, and that lane ends 1 block later anyhow. So it's really just to squeeze that Guadalupe traffic over the bridge, and then it merges. Another comment and design feature request that we discussed was putting a median buffer. When the median gets reconstructed, putting a buffer piece on the other side of the crosswalk. So on the inside of the crosswalk, so you basically get a median island to stand if you get stranded halfway across. And that wouldn't add much to the project, but it would add a lot to safety because it would slow down turning speeds slightly, and it would just give a greater sense of protection and safety for pedestrians or bicyclists who get caught in the middle. It looks to me, third point, it looks to me like the ramps, the existing ramps were not going to be touched by the project. Is that correct?
Ray?
The ramps for ADA
Yeah.
on this project. Those ramps. Let me think back. I don't believe we're going to touch them on this project because for the DeForest Street project back in 2016, those were rebuilt around the intersection of Alameda and Guadalupe.
Okay. I just wanted to comment that the ramp design isn't sort of the recommended ADA design because they point directly to the center of the intersection. So if someone's visually impaired and they're using a stick to see which direction the crosswalk is, it's hard for them to tell because there's no surfaces that are parallel to the crosswalk. So it might be worth looking into making 2 ramps, one going north and one going east. Either of those things rather than the one ramp that kind of points into the center of the intersection.
Okay.
If those are going to be touched, that would be an improvement. One comment, I didn't look into this, but Laura, who's on our committee, mentioned that the master bike plan calls for a future extension of the river trail that's going to be going underneath the bridges, and was kind of interested in knowing if any sort of preparatory work would be part of this project for that. Looks like it's not, but
as far as I understand, it is not. Yes.
Okay. One other concern was, is this possibly an opportunity for the city to reprogram the crosswalks and makes a priority pedestrian signal where you don't have to push the button, where it would automatically give a pedestrian phase when there's a traffic phase? Is the phasing something that this project can touch?
Ray?
The traffic signal phasing, it's not part of our scope. However, that's something we can look into if the city would like us to.
If you're there and working on it, it seems like it would be a real easy way to spend 10 minutes and get that done.
Mr. Chair, Member Tallman, the MPO submitted that comment to the Guadalupe Reconstruction. The Guadalupe Reconstruction has within its purview what you just described.
Okay, so that's part of a different project then, huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Ray, those are all the comments that we discussed before. And just right now, when you were presenting, it looks like there's not really. It looks like the consideration during construction is that people will cross to the opposite side of the street when you're doing the sidewalk reconstruction, and there's not sort of an on the asphalt space for pedestrians or bicyclists to go parallel to the traffic on either side while construction is happening. Is that the plan that anyone non-motorized users are going to have to use the opposite side of the street during construction, or do you have some consideration to keep those lanes accessible?
Well, unfortunately, with the tight work zone there, for safety reasons, we've had to move. When one of the sidewalks is closed, we've prepared pedestrian traffic control plans that show where they can cross safely to the other side and get around. It should only take them very long, it might take a minute or two out of their travel way to get through the intersection there. It's just that it's such a tight area for construction and for safety reasons. And like I said, too, the construction on each of those phases is only 10 to 14 days, so it's a short duration.
Right.
So if you take into account both sidewalks being closed, that's 20 to 28 days maximum, 10 to 14 per side.
Okay. And let's see. Are there any opportunities in this project to, I guess it's a little bit beyond Btac, but to install sort of like, is there any sort of improvement with the stormwater system or?
Not on this project. Our scope was just the bridge itself. There is a storm drain just on the south side of the bridge that comes out of the vertical retaining walls. But yeah, our scope, as you saw, it's just the bridge itself and the 10 feet of approach asphalt.
Well, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other committee member comments for Mr. Trujillo? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Trujillo, and thank you, Sky, for your comments. I'm assuming there's not any action needing to be taken on this particular agenda item. Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and move on to the next.
Would an action be to make sort of a suggestion to put a buffer on the inside part of the median on the other side of the crosswalk? Would that be an action item, or is that enough said?
I think that would need to be an action item.
Okay, well, I would make a motion to make that a suggestion to include in the design.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tallman. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, second by Cal. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. Can we get a roll call vote, Romella, please?
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Member Eisenstein,
Yes.
Member Finger,
Yes.
Member Gabriel,
Yes.
Member Morlino,
Yes.
Member Redner,
Yes.
Member Serrano, Member Spencer,
Yes.
Member Tallman,
Yes.
Chair Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. Thank
And I
you,
guess
Romella.
I would make a second motion to look into the feasibility of reducing the number of travel lanes over the bridge based on the Guadalupe Street plans, based on the future realignment of Guadalupe.
So is that in germane to the bridge though? I just want to get some
because the
clarification.
bridge has 5 travel lanes, which are continuing across the street to what's going to be 2 travel lanes. And so I think, and the reason why it's important is that if we reduced, say, even just one of the southbound travel lanes, because right now there's those 2 lanes and one of them ends at Agua Fria. So it goes 1 block and then ends. And it's already not really an overcapacity issue, but it's almost, you almost can't even imagine how that second lane would even be accessed or needed or used if there's only 1 lane feeding into it from any direction at any given time. So it's hard to imagine that would be a bottleneck by reducing that lane, because there would never be 2 lanes of traffic feeding into it. Anyway,
okay.
Looking into feasibility of not having that extra lane also opens up the possibility. It gives you another 10 feet, 12 feet of street to work with, so that you could consider continuing the bicycle lanes that will in the future be built across the street and make a more connective network.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Sky. And just a quick point of order or point of clarification. Romella, were you able to get the motion that Sky
Yes.
just made?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have a second on Sky's motion?
Second.
Okay, seconded by committee member Spencer. Any discussion?
It would seem appropriate that if this is some reason the city engineers think it's a bad idea, they can come back and tell us. Otherwise, it seems that we're asking is that the bridge be rebuilt in consideration of future design needs with the change in the number of lanes on the rest of Guadalupe.
Okay, thank you, committee member Spencer. Any other comments or discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. So with that, Ms. Glorioso Mas, will you conduct a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Member Eisenstein,
Yes.
Member Finger,
Yes.
Member Gabriel,
Yes.
Member Morlino,
Yes.
Member Redner,
Yes.
Member Serrano,
Yes.
Member Spencer,
Yes.
Member Tallman,
Yes.
Chair Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have any other discussion or action to be taken on item 7D or 7C? Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is 7D, Staff Liaison Report. Ms. Glorioso Mas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I submitted the report. The Public Works, Roadway and Trails applied for funding for 4 projects under Surface Transportation Block Grant. That first was, this is alphabetically ordered. So Arroyo Chamizo Crossing for preliminary engineering, Bishop's Lodge Road Reconstruction Project from engineering design to construction, Rufina Lopez Lane Intersection Improvements Project from engineering design to construction, and St. Michael's Reconstruction Project, which is a location study for phase A and B. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also applied for additional funding for constructing Guadalupe Street Reconstruction Project, which is an additional $2.5 million, which HCIP granted. last week. For design review, the Guadalupe Street Reconstruction project has been reviewed by NMDOT 2 weeks ago. They will proceed to PSNE and obtaining certifications and right-of-way acquisition. Fourth item is the status of our resolution. There were a number of changes from November 2020 draft. Number one is we are reestablishing our committee and renaming the committee as opposed to amending the existing resolution. There will be now 9 public members instead of 8. The quorum will be 6 instead of 5. They removed the following sentence, the subcommittee shall engage solely in investigating and assembling facts for the committee because this is an advisory committee. Number 5 is the established term limits equal to 6 consecutive years of service. So the previous draft says there are no term limits. And this is not only the change for Btac or Bpac soon. This will be for all advisory committees. Councilor Bihil Kapler also co-sponsored this resolution with Councilor Garcia. After this, I was told that the city attorney and finance director signed the resolution, the draft resolution, and it will go before the finance committee on January 19, to quality of life on January 20, and to the governing body for approval on January 27. If you have any questions, I stand for. I will answer your questions to my best of ability.
Thank you, Ms. Glorioso Mas. Does any committee member have any questions? Okay, thank you so much for the thorough review, and well, I'll leave my comments to matters from the chair later on. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on the agenda. So we've got now subcommittee communications. Item 8A, Law and Policy Subcommittee, Committee Member Eisenstein. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Councilor Garcia. I have 3 items to present this evening. The first is regarding legislation. As we all know, the legislature is getting ready to convene. And I don't know if the committee has ever done this before, but I thought we would try it this year and see how things went. One of my subcommittee members, Gary Schiffmiller, and I are going to be tracking legislation. You can track legislation by keywords. And so he and I have registered with my Roundhouse. And so anytime a bill is introduced that has our keyword in it, whether it's hiking or biking or streets or sidewalks or whatever that we've set up, we'll get alerted. And so what we'll do is we'll look at the bill, and if we think it's of interest to the committee, we'll just put out a notice, however Romella thinks we should do it, just letting you know that here's a bill, here's the sponsor, just for your own interest. So we're going to try that and see. We may not have any bills that are of interest, but if we do, we thought it might be helpful for us to see them. And it would be bills that might affect another jurisdiction, whether it's Albuquerque or Las Cruces or whatever. So I just wanted to advise the committee that we're going to be doing that over the next few months. And I'll work with Romella in terms of the best way to get the information to you so that we don't have any sort of issue with the Open Meetings Acts. So that's number one that we're going to do. And related to that is I found this memo that talked about legislative priorities for the city. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I was wondering how it's developed, what the process is. And I wanted to see if perhaps Councilor Garcia could enlighten us a little bit, if it's something that the city council is involved with, or how that works, and whether the next session Btac could weigh in on issues that, you know, it might find relevant as far as legislation is concerned, because I know there's some issues here right now that sort of relate to what we do. So I was just curious as to how that process works.
Sure, and I'd be happy to give a quick, in a nutshell, process, and then if we need to dive in deeper, I'm more than happy to go that route. So the way the legislative priorities work for the city is, and I've only been through it once, so I'll go through my experience this past year. We've taken prior priorities, which we consider to be continuing priorities, which get added to the priority list. The administration might have particular priorities. And then as it goes through committees, it does get committee reviewed. Councilors might, we have input on the matter. If there is a priority we feel that might be missing, or we want to reemphasize. So for example, I know that as we went through the process this year, it wasn't on the initial draft of the priority list, and through the committee process, we added, we would like to support the ban of chokeholds by police force. So we added that to our list. So it goes through the committee process, just like a resolution or bill or whatever. And then it goes in front of the body for final approval. And then what happens is we work with our lobbyists to address those issues. To get to your question in regards to does Btac, I'm sorry, I was already thinking BPAC. Does Btac have any input in that? I think yes. And as long as it is in regards to what is germane to this group, I'm more than happy to take the recommendations and put them forth as we go through the process next year. For folks that might not be aware, in our legislature, we have two different types of sessions. In our odd number years, which we have this year, we have a 60-day session where legislators can introduce legislation on any topic, specific topic. That it's not specific. We've got to pass the budget, and any topic a legislator feels relevant. In even number years, we have a 30-day session, what they call budget session, which the priority is to pass the budget. And the only topics that may be brought up are topics that are germane to what the governor calls for the legislature to work on. And so that is, the focus is a little more narrow in even number years, whereas in odd number years, it's a little broader. So dependent on the year, the city's legislative priorities shift according to what year it is, and whether it's a budget year or an open year. So hopefully that helped clarify and provide some answer for you, Ms. Eisenstein. And like I said, I'm more than happy to, as we go through this process, bring any relevant legislation or legislative priorities that Btac feels relevant to the rest of the governing body.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. So do you think that there would be any issues? I mean, I guess we would have to wait until the governor list or whatever presents her issues for the financial aspect of the session, which would be next year. At that point, would we look and see if there's anything on the governor's list that might impact us?
That is a tough call, because usually the governor's call comes out relatively closer to the beginning of the session. And at that point, the governing body has already approved the legislative priorities. So I think we approved our legislative priorities in early December. Because what happens is there are bills that are introduced prior to the start of the session, or at least worked on. And then once the session starts, they immediately get introduced. So our lobbyist starts to immediately work on those priorities with the respective legislators that might be bringing up those bills. So I think we can look at what priorities. I think the best way to approach it is what legislative priorities Btac might have, and then frame the course of action in regards to that, because it might have budget relevance. It might be a priority because the governor's call is not solely budgetary issues. It's other issues as well. So with that, I think first thing is what would be the legislative priority that Btac would want to get behind, and then we can move forward from there.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, at this point, I don't really think any action needs to be taken. I just wanted to advise the committee that our subcommittee is going to be tracking legislation, and if something comes up that we feel is really important, then we can discuss it at the February meeting or at some other point. So anyway, this is sort of an experiment to see if this is something that proves valuable to the committee as we go forward. Does anyone have any questions for me on the legislative issue?
Member Gabrielle has her hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's actually more of a comment and offering. So I'm newly retired, and I'm planning to monitor some of the public health legislation that I'm interested in this year. If you know of a bill that's come up, we also have the ability to see when the committee meets. And as somebody who's not working, I could participate in the committee meeting, just listen in. I'm assuming they're going to be on Zoom. So please feel free to tap into me if you find something that's relevant to us, and I would try to attend a committee meeting.
That sounds great. And you and I can maybe coordinate that and switch out between us, because I don't have a regular work schedule either. So let's kind of see how things go. And I would ask if there are any committee members who want me to track a certain keyword. We've gone over the basics, the hiking, the biking, pedestrian, sidewalks, things like that. But I mean, if there's something that is unusual that you think would be relevant, just shoot me an email and say, plug this into your keyword, and we'll track that as well. Yes, Mr. Spencer.
So just one procedural question. If we wanted to have the city push a particular bill or bills, what will we presumably do? Put a motion to the governing body to support a particular bill, and then have the city and its lobbyists work with the legislature? Or presumably we wouldn't do it directly as a committee, because we exist to advise the governing body. I mean, there's already one bill type that Sky mentioned on the radio the other day, which I think would be really relevant, which would be a statewide complete street ordinance, which would basically tie all municipalities, especially towards a complete street paradigm. So how would we do that? Would we essentially do it through a motion of the council?
I think that's a great question. As I mentioned, because this is my first go round with this in regards to legislative priorities for the city, I can inquire in regards if we've ever added priorities to our legislative priorities. It would require an amendment to the resolution that set forth our priorities, which might not work in the sense of timing, because it does have to go through the entire process again, so to speak. That probably would be the course of action, but let me check in on that, Cal, for you, because I'm sure there might have been issues in the past where it got brought up at the legislature. The city supports it, wasn't on our priority list, and we need to ensure that our lobbyist works and supports that on our behalf. So let me check in on that.
Okay. So it sounds like we'd have to get out ahead of the game so that we could get our input to the council, so the council could approve it, so it could be put on the city's legislative agenda. So we need to know what the timeline would be for that.
Right, and I know that our legislative priority list came out in late fall.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Lynn.
Absolutely.
Well,
Any other-
at a minimum, the other thing we could do is, as an individual, if there's a bill that's going through the legislature, you can certainly call the sponsor or the representative as an individual and, offer support for it. So, even if we're constrained somewhat as a committee, having the information hopefully might help if it's something that you personally are in favor of. So hopefully it might have some value in that sense.
I think that could be done through things like Bike Santa Fe, which is an independent organization. It doesn't tie our hands in terms of our mandate as a city committee. We could do this as individuals through an independent advocacy organization. So there's more than one way to do this. I hate to say skin a cat, given the current anti-trapping stuff going on.
I was waiting for that phrase.
I stopped myself.
Thank you.
We
you
have
for
two
that.
cats.
Okay. The next item is the strategic work plan, which Ramella graciously formatted for me and we distributed. And I think the next step, as far as my thoughts are concerned, is there are a lot of obviously outside the committee entities and people who are going to be necessary to help us implement the plan. And so my question is, how do we find out who those people are? For example, one of the strategies is to do the bike racks. Everybody's excited about the bike racks. So, who do we contact? How do we move forward on that? So I'm not really sure what the answer is, but I wanted to put it out for either Ramella or Councilor Garcia to sort of give us some guidance on how we determine who to contact so we can start to implement our strategic plan.
Well, I think we would, and Ramella, I don't know if you want to go first. I'm more than happy to chime in and then go after you.
Mr. Chair, this is Eric. I'd be happy to jump in for Ramella.
Sure. And I was just going to say we'd partner up with folks like Eric, and Eric, I'm going to hand it off to you.
I appreciate it. First of all, a member, I can't pronounce your name correctly.
Just call me Yolanda. Yolanda is perfectly fine.
I love it. Thank you, Yolanda. I appreciate it. Anyway, I really
or you can
appreciate.
Also call me Einstein. I get that sometimes.
Yeah,
so,
I said that
I don't mind being associated with Albert.
I said that last time at the meeting, and I felt totally embarrassed. So I'll call you Yolanda.
That's
anyway,
good.
I really appreciate that people are excited about bike parking. What I was going to do as soon as tomorrow is to make an invitation to Parking Division and Regina Wheeler Public Works to institutionalize a budget item for bike rack parking. Mr. Noel Correa, Parking Division Director, had committed to doing that last year, but then COVID came in and sort of decimated the budget. So I'm going to respectfully request that occur again, and we'll see what happens. I will immediately provide you an update when I get feedback. So again, I'm glad people are excited about bike parking, because we are too.
Okay, great. But in terms of the other aspects of the plan, is this something that I can meet with Ramella and we can go through the strategies and sort of map out the people that we need to talk with or the departments, so we can sort of look at the plan and give everybody a job to do on the committee so that we can actually get the plan implemented?
Mr. Chair, may I
Yes, Carmela.
suggest that, Mr. Chair, may I suggest that each subcommittee review the strategic work plan and each subcommittee take the action that they can implement. And if there are some two subcommittees that need to implement the plan, because the problem for us is we cannot meet, two subcommittees meet because of OMA, but that may be changing soon. So that's our limitation, because all the discussion outside for the subcommittee needs to be public because we need to follow OMA. But in the future, maybe we won't have that constraint anymore. And I will explain it later why we will not have that constraint in the future. So what I would like to suggest to the committee is for the subcommittees to read the work plan and in February come back with specific action that they could implement.
Well, how do we keep from duplicating our efforts if we go off and do that? I mean, if Cal's subcommittee wants to do strategy 3 and we want to do strategy 3, I'm not sure how that would work.
So in February, we will have another discussion and we will, if there are, then we will resolve that problem in February. For example, planning would like to take action 3, implement action 3, and law and policy would like to implement it also. And so, and I understand that we need to work together. Maybe 2 subcommittees need to implement action 1 or action 3. So we will resolve that problem in February.
Okay.
Question.
Committee member Spencer.
Okay, as far as the subcommittees, I mean, their work breakdown structure can be sort of put into their titles, but as individual members of this committee, I think all of us have interest beyond our subcommittees. For example, the sidewalk question is something I'd like to see addressed. Right now, it's the onus for sidewalk maintenance goes to the property owner, but that's not the case for the street in front of the house. And what I'd like to see is that the sidewalks be treated as part of the transportation system, and at a future time introduce a motion to have the city policy change so that the city is responsible for maintenance of sidewalks to a uniform standard through city funds rather than passing it on to the individual, especially as we have an aging population. If a lot of people are retired, it's just not fair or feasible to expect someone to rebuild a sidewalk to city standards and to bring it up to ADA. So, I mean, is that something that, I think that's something that probably several of us are interested in beyond the policy subcommittee. So how do we do that? We basically wait for the policy subcommittee to bring that up, or do we request a motion to the floor at a certain point?
Mr. Chair.
I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
Member Spencer, we're talking about the strategic plan.
But that's in the plan. Yeah, that's in our work
in the plan. Okay, so the best thing is for the law and policy, because they're that subcommittee. Maybe you can request the law and policy subcommittee to bring that up, and they will be the responsible subcommittee to write that policy. It's a draft, and then the committee discuss it and vote on it, and then it will need to go to Public Works, and then Finance and the governing body. I'm not sure if it needs to go to Quality of Life.
Okay, does it, as we advise council, I mean, do we send a motion to council, or do we send a request to a city department?
I think the Btac needs to send it to appropriate council committees and not to the directly to the governing body. Because for example, Public Works has a say on that policy. The city policy, land use has a say on that proposed city policy. So it needs to be reviewed by appropriate council committees. So for this specific proposed policy, it will be reviewed by Public Works. And if it's voted, if it failed at Public Works, I don't think it can continue to finance and to the governing body.
Thank you.
Okay, any other
Okay.
questions for Yolanda? Or Yolanda, the floor is back yours.
Okay, the final issue, and I'll be quick on this, is the partnerships. I put together a list based on partnerships that Leah gave me that MPO has had in the past. And the subcommittee, our subcommittee added a couple. But what I'd like to do at this point is I would like everyone's input on other potential partnership organizations or entities. And then we can put together a master list and decide how we want to pursue partnerships and what sort of partnerships we would establish. So that would be my third point, is if everyone can just take a look at the list, and I think probably the next meeting we can do a master list and have a discussion on how we would pursue partnerships.
Okay, and that, yeah, and I think the best course of action would be, and I apologize, my computer just shut down, so I don't have my agenda in front of me. Was that part of the packet, the list?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it was the last page of the packet. It's just a one-page bulleted document, and I sort of divided it up between different types of organizations, you know, hiking groups, biking groups. And so if we can just put together a master list and discuss how we want to do the partnerships, and perhaps it's a education subcommittee list that should be maintained, we can decide how we want to go forward. But I just think we both subcommittees, law and policy and the program, have talked about how important it is to start to look at some partnerships. And maybe it's just a matter of reaching out to some of these organizations and bike shops and say, hey, we're your Btac committee. What can we do to help you? What are some things that you're hearing from people who come in your shop or whatever? So, you know, that may be just a start of just reaching out to some of these different organizations and seeing if there are things that they need or would like to have from us. But I do think it's something that we could be productive at.
Okay, and so what we'll have to do is we're going to have to add that to discussion item for next committee, because ultimately the subcommittee communications should just be a report out. We shouldn't get into necessarily a back and forth discussion on topics. And I think that's why Sky potentially brought the topic up to us earlier in the discussion items. And that, I guess this is just a note for chairs that whenever we have items that we want other input from committee members, and we don't necessarily have to take action, let's just put it in discussion action items in that portion of the agenda. But we'll make sure, I think the next steps are to review the list, have that as homework. We'll add that to discussion and possible actions for next meeting, and then move forward accordingly. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. And
Okay.
That's the end of my report for law and policy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to please pass my thanks along to the subcommittee members. Next subcommittee report is from Planning and Funding Subcommittee.
Hello, everyone. So at our meeting, we discussed mostly our 90% or our 60% review on Guadalupe Bridge. We also brought up a question about the maze gap, the barrier maze, and I sent that on to Eric, and he reported back that the city is pursuing sort of a solution to that. So that is sort of on the radar. That is an actively pursued item. We expressed a little bit of regret that the lighting project on Harrison Road was so auto-oriented, and hope that in the future we can get more pedestrian scale lighting on similar projects. I sent this concern to Eric, so I don't think there's anything to discuss right now, but we were looking at one of these kind of gaps in the network between the underpass that was just built underneath St. Francis, at Cerrilloso and St. Francis. If you are on the School of the Deaf side of that underpass, and you want to go and cross Cerrillos, there's just like a pretty narrow 3 or 4, maybe 5 sidewalk. And previously, maybe back in 2018 or 2017, there had been an asphalt extension to that sidewalk, but it looks like that was removed with the construction of the underpass. And so I don't think that's city right of way. I think that might be DOT right of way. But we were thinking that would be something we'd want to look into take to widen that again. Not really at any conclusion there yet, but that's one of the issues we looked at. And then the other issue that we discussed was that Buckman Road has some maintenance needs, and that's a road. I don't personally ride on that road very often, but people who do ride on that have said that that's in pretty poor condition. So it is on our bicycle master plan, but it's a phase C priority, and so that's down the line. So if that can maybe that can be bumped up, or maybe we can just sort of acknowledge that as a maintenance need. And we got an update from Tim Rogers at our meeting, or that we discussed at our meeting, that the point that he had brought up at our last meeting about the in at the pedestrian crossing at the South Capitol Station was going to preclude space for bike lanes, and the city has changed their design. So they're going to have both the median and the bike lanes. So that's an update.
Great, thank you, Sky. I really appreciate that. Next up, Promotion, Education, and Programming Subcommittee.
Mr. Chair, we have nothing further to report beyond agenda item 7A, which we already discussed.
Thank you. And as well for the Planning and Funding Subcommittee and the Promotion, Education, and Programming Subcommittee, please pass along my thanks to the subcommittee members.
Thank you.
Matters from staff, Romella.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to inform the committee that the city is updating the rules and procedures for advisory committees, so to make our meetings more efficient and we become more effective. Some of the changes that they will do and affect us is that there are some committees that are not that will not need to follow OMA, so that we can meet without that constraint, and that's, I think, one of the most significant impact to advisory committees. They are also changing the terms. the members' terms is 2 years. Some advisory committees, their terms are 4 years, like public safety. And so I do not know when this will be rolled out, but will not be affected with that because our term is only 2 years. And then there are a lot of changes, but I think it's for the better. And they will also define the role of the chair, the vice chair, and the staff liaison. There will be some trainings for members, advisory committee members. And that's how we met this morning with the the lead person for this, updating the rules and procedures of advisory committee. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Glorioso Mas. Next on the agenda is matters from the committee. Any committee members have anything they want to bring to others' attention? Committee Member Spencer.
Question on the Open Meetings Act, if it continues to apply to us or not. My concern is that our constituency may not have the joyous view of us not being covered by the Open Meetings Act as perhaps the city would, or even if it's easier. So is there any thought to what the public view is of committees not being subject to OMA?
All the meetings will still be open to public. But for example, the constraint that we're facing now, the subcommittees can only have maximum of 4 members of the committee, because we don't want to, we have to follow OMA. Okay. Those are the constraints that we will not be, we don't have to follow anymore. So the committee, all members of the committee can discuss, for example, the strategic work plan. And we're not constrained by numbers of committee members.
And if it might help to clarify, Cal, so ultimately what it would do is open up the membership to meet and not as Ms. Glorioso Mas mentioned, not have that kind of constraint. Think of it in this sense. If no action is being taken, you're fine meeting. But if action is going to be taken, it's got to be conducted in a meeting such as this.
My impression was that one of the purposes was to prevent committees from doing all the legwork out of sight of the public and then essentially making a show of a public meeting when it's made public. So I'm a little uneasy with that, but the city makes its rules and we follow them. But that's
a state rule. So okay. It's coming up at the legislature. They're looking at that and revising that. So we have to follow the state laws. Okay. It's not a city procedure. So that's maybe something that as we're going through this session, folks want to pay attention to. But yeah, sorry for jumping in. Didn't mean to do that.
No, that's fine. Thank you. That's
absolutely. Ms. Glorioso Mas, was that all? Or Cal? We're matters from the committee. I'm sorry.
That's all for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other members? I see Bruce, Committee Member Finger.
After the meeting's over, could I give a quick phone call that you've been trying to get a hold of me for public safety?
Absolutely. You got it, Bruce.
Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Any other committee members? Don't see any. Okay. let's go ahead and move on to matters from the chair. No real major updates from me. Just if you haven't, please make sure to tune into the podcasts that our fellow committee member radio stars participated in. Committee member Spencer, committee member Tallman, and committee member Finger. I mean, great. Thank you guys for going out there and really making Btac proud. You getting those. That was some. It was awesome to hear that. So thank you all. And hopefully there's future opportunities for folks to participate in such. But with that, just thank you everybody for the constant support and hard work you put into this committee. I know that, these meetings are long, but, it just shows how much effort and how serious you take these matters. So I really appreciate that. With that, our next meeting is Thursday, February 11th. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Be safe, everybody.